Yahoo, Prof here, and I need to get that disgusting taste out of my mouth. DeWalt. Watch my previous video if you want to know what I'm talking about. I'm ashamed for DeWalt for them. They can do better. Like I said, the more I handled it, the better in hand it felt. Complained about the size a little bit originally. In the end, I think it was a pretty well built product, but yeah. If you say torque control, better be torque control. So let's try to put that behind us a little bit, because that's just going back. Let's look at this guy here. If you guys have probably already seen the title and or the beginning of 2 videos ago now, or if you've been around here long enough, you recognize the packaging. VAXEE E1 4K. E1's only available in 4K. E1 4K. What color is that? Let's zoom on in. Jerp. Jerp. Is it green? E1 FG wireless. FG. FG. Includes moose with its... Hey, they were smart about this. E1FG. FCC certifications. And all that nonsense. Dongle. Separate FCC certifications. So they can package them different without having to recertify it all. Smart guys and gals over at VAXEE. FG. Anybody know what that might be? You still probably can't tell. Oh, that's just the cable. Now you can tell. E1FG. Fluorescent green. It's about as close to yellow. God, I forget how light the E1 is for its bulbous size. Done a previous one. I wanted the blue one when the E1 came out. You got the red one, which was the other new color. That's one of the... They're going white, black, blue, red for their new stuff. They did the same for the Sora, except they also did gray, which because this is based on the XES, which has the Shishiro Botan edition. Pretty sure that's the same gray for the Shishiro Botan, which they can use because, well, I don't think that would have any issues, but because the XES was available in the Shishiro Botan gray, they already have it in this base to be modified into the Sora. So, of course, I picked up that one. Gotta match Mooski's Shishiro Botan XES that he's got. Neon green. Once I saw them announce and release the neon green E1, I was like, I'm not too and it wasn't just blue, by the way, guys. It was navy blue. It's this nice, dark, full looking blue. Good. The red that I ended up getting, actually really nice. If you check out these, I believe the Sora review, we may or may not have it in there. David picked that up off me because I told him, like, hey, this one came out, I gotta pick it up. So he got that one off me because he was using it at work. He's like, "This is a freaking nice mouse." I'm like, "Yep." So then I got the E1 FG, which is the fluorescent green edition. Here is fluorescent yellow. That's where, in my eyes, it looked like this is the limited or collector's edition or creator edition, I think. M75 Air. Very expensive to get this release one with the box and the mouse pad and stuff like that. Actually, one of Corsair's actually good mice, M75. This thing, I believe, was 100 for the base model and then like 150 or maybe 150 down to 100. Either way, price has plummeted on these. One of the super duper annoying things that they could fix via firmware that they really should do is clicking this button switches it between 2.4 gigahertz and Bluetooth and holding it for a prolonged period of time. Turns it off. Clicking it should change the frickin' DPI. Then a, say, 3-second hold should make it change modes and or double click, maybe like a click within a certain period of time. You know, or you can hold a button, click it, something like that, because just like the G Pro wireless, even though I mean G Pro, I'm not huge on the shape. It's surprising how ergonomic it is, despite how the shape doesn't seem like it has many curves. But they put really small ones in the right places. Right, here's the issue with the. And this is why, like, some people are like, well, why does the Pro 2, actually, Squares brought that up, why does the Pro 2 even exist? And I think it's because either the people who want buttons on this side, like, say you're actually a lefty, or the people like me that actually want to be able to change your freaking DPI. Because the Superlight can't do that. You set one DPI, you never change it. This as well is the same way. By the way, Corsair, you're not supposed to copy the dumb shit that other brands do. Also, the fact that this is one click to switch modes, accidentally doing that is far too easy to switch between 2.4 gigahertz and Bluetooth. Like, it's just that, and it's switching. Very awkward. Shape of this, though, if you only use one DPI ever, give it a shot. It's super lightweight, actually a good shape, has good rear palm support back here. You know, it's because of the pretty long sloped buttocks. So this is what I was thinking when they originally showed off the pictures, but you can kind of see side by side. It is more of a muted. I still think it's more on the yellow than the green, but it does have this green tinge, like a green. You know, like when you eat something, you got an aftertaste to it. That's kind of where the green is. And it's in like the shadows of the yellow. I'm still, you know, because here's the yellow, for example. You know. And I ended up getting the yellow on my XE wireless because I have orange for my wired one. And originally when the XE came out, it only came in black and white. Then I didn't like the white finish, and I had broken. Actually, for a while there, I ran both the white one in what do you want to say, like productivity mode, because I used to have different firmwares, and then the yellow one in gamer mode, or competitive. Like, I believe it was the original firmware had productivity or gamer, and then you could flash a different firmware on there that was competitive mode, right? And you couldn't get back without flashing to the other modes. So I kept the yellow one for comparisons, and it's like, holy shit, that made me realize, I may or may not have some videos on it, but that made me realize how much firmware for the mouse can affect how the mouse feels. Eventually, what it turned out is that basically people either used productivity mode or competitive mode, so then they smashed those two together, and because in the competitive mode, they actually turned off too much of... Basically, what it turns out is you can get more responsiveness out of a mouse by turning off features even further. However, then it didn't charge properly, among other things, and you couldn't switch to dual dongle and stuff like that. We also lost that when we went to 4K. I don't believe they've still brought back dual dongle. They claim they will. I have a second 4K dongle for this guy for when they do. because that way I can switch between. It was kind of awkward. It was like hold these two at the same time, I think, or it was boop boop, and then like something like that. I'd have to look up what the switching or might have been middle click switching procedure is. David Squares now has my white one because I broke the middle click. I don't remember how I broke the middle click on that one. It wasn't like the orange guy where it got all like we get stuck scrolling. Something else happened. Like the click. Oh, the click I think was like not clicking properly. I tend to break middle clicks on mine because I use it for reloading games. And then when it came back, I just was like, hey, I got my yellow one now. And now that they've merged the profiles, I didn't really ever really want the white one. They just said, oh, we only have black and white until we make colored versions. And I really like the wired XE. Basically, the only thing that was holding me back from running the wired XE as my main is that it was wired. So as soon as it went wireless, I grabbed the white one. Then I grabbed the yellow one because I didn't want an orange one because my orange one was the wired one. Now my XES is orange. The yellow's not bad at all. Yeah, yellow is my main color, but this is more of like a muted yellow. Now this, and you can see, hopefully you should be able to see like the green tinge, especially in like the let me zoom to 2x here, especially in like the shadows on the E1. You can see the green even more there. Like it's got a green tinge to it. You know, so once this color came out, I was like, okay, I don't care about not having the navy blue one anymore. I am getting the fluorescent green guy. And then I was like, I kind of gave David a bit of heads up, like, hey, I'm picking this up. Would you at all be interested in my red one? You know, it's got a couple months of use on it. Gave him a bit of a discount. And he was using it for work, and he's like, yep. So that is why I didn't have it. Some of you in the comments were asking how certain mice compared to this with click height and some other stuff. Sadly, and I let you know, I couldn't answer you because, and I didn't even think about that. I was like, oh, I'll go get, oh, yep. I'd literally just gotten rid of it, like as of that video that you were asking that stuff on. So this one's going to go right into rotation. Oh, and I did tell Squares he would get this cable because I couldn't find my other E1 cable. And I don't use them. Anyway. So we'll put that over by my bag for work. Here is the dongle Daikazoku. And I'm going to have to label it on the bottom here. E1FG, fluorescent green. And yeah, I'm kind of debating whether or not I should have labeled that in like a brighter color. And on the top so I could actually read it. So I don't have to like unplug them and flip them over and be like, oh, did I plug the right one in? You know, like, now I can kind of tell though, because the replacement receivers are silver, and the XE only has the replacement receiver. So I can kind of tell which one that one is, and I'm guessing that's why they did gold for the main receiver and silver for the backup. It's kind of like they did white and black. Like the original one for this was black, and then the replacement or additional, like the second receiver, was white. Hopefully they still have, and I haven't followed up with them at all, but hopefully they still have the idea of these mice having two receivers. Kind of makes it so I don't need to have Bluetooth, because that's the other thing that I would like to have is, if you don't, like, two receivers does kind of make up for that though, and actually I would argue in many cases is even better. Yeah, let me know if you have any comments on this one specifically. Otherwise, check out my full E1 video. I am pumped to get this fluorescent green one. They had announced it that it would release in December. And yeah, even more, you can see like in the reflection in the yellow one. I don't know if that'll come through on video, But basically this green, the fluorescent green guy is reflecting off of this edge on the yellow one. It looks really green there. Whereas that same sort of thing is not happening with this, you know, this very yellow Corsair here. And here's orange for comparison. Here's my Thorn 4K. Oh, wait, I do want more. Hey, Thorn 4K. So I think it might even be hard. Let me know if you guys actually can get that fluorescent green in on the video, because like I said, I'm almost seeing the green more in the reflections than I am in the actual mouse directly. This looks very yellow to me until it starts reflecting off something yellow. But yeah, I'm pumped to have that one. And Square's got my red one, so it's off to a new home. So people are like, oh, what happens to some of these? Can I have the mouse? Realistically, unless I have two of them, somehow. Now, it's happened where I've bought, like, I have two. I guess I could give that away at some point. I don't know who wants, like, it's like a Fanatic Clutch 2. I'd have to find it. I have two of those. Otherwise, if I have stuff like that, I usually give it away to local friends. I don't have to ship it. I don't have to run a giveaway, etc. Now, in the past, I have partnered with the likes of Roccat, no longer exists. They're on Turtle Beach. Makes sense why I stopped hearing from my PR person. Cooler Master, their PR changed. And after that happened, I basically got a message of like, why were they working with you? And I'm like, oh, well, that's not going to happen anymore. Prior to that, also was SteelSeries with their U.S. Headquarters, since it's actually not that far from me. We're talking back when they came out with their original WoW mouse. So there might have been some places in between there that I've sent over one or two. Cooler Master, I believe, was the one. Roccat at one time gave us two, like a black one and white one. One got given away. I kept the white one. That white one ended up having to be replaced because it had bad 2.5 gigahertz. Only worked on Bluetooth properly. I didn't hear any issues with the giveaway. And Cooler Master had given us stuff to give away before, where they'd even sent us multiples. Like, because I was like, hey, I would like to be able to pull these apart. Can I have one to pull apart and then one for testing, so that when we pull it apart, we don't mess with the test sample? And then they've also given us, like, they would have like a high-end one. We get two of those, and then we get the low-end one, and we could give away the low-end one or a bundle or something like that away. That happened. So if you guys want to see that stuff here, reach out. We probably got to start with getting products from brands again before the brand's going to help us give stuff away to you guys. Maybe we can start with giving stuff away to you guys. Gotta work with the brands though. Because sadly, like, these are coming out of my own pocket. Meaning I do not have that's why I said it's gonna have, like, even when I give them away to friends, it's because I have multiple of them. You know, and that may or maybe got because there was a cheap price. I didn't know I had it when I bought it. Sometimes Squares or other people have been like, hey, I'm done with this mouse, add it to your collection. Or I never ended up using this one, and then I end up having a duplicate. It happened with a Basilisk as well. That went over to a buddy who runs Razer mice, and he was having to unplug his mouse from his desktop and use it with his laptop. I was like, here you go. Now you don't have to do that, and it's the same driver. So if you do want to swap them at some point, he was normally a Death Adder guy. You know, at least Basilisk is right-hand ergo. So, that way he doesn't, like, otherwise when he brought his laptop places and if he wanted to use his mouse, he'd have to, like, unplug the mouse. And I'm like, bro, let's get you fixed up. You don't need to be doing that. You don't need to be doing that. You know what I mean? So that's usually where my stuff, if I'm going to give stuff away, that's where it goes first, is people who are nearby around me and have a need for it. But if I can get some partnerships with some of these brands, I'd love hear from VAXEE. They usually mostly work with the pro scene. But I just because I like how they design stuff. Like they iterate on it and they improve it. And you see each of those steps even in the firmware. You know what I mean? You don't see that with other brands. They just don't communicate it. This has never been updated. Corsair, like there might have been an update on launch, like when I got this and getting the creators one. You got this before the normal one. There was an update for it on launch. To my knowledge, and I may be wrong because I haven't checked in like 2 months probably. It's never been updated. Right? That's crazy. Right? Like, also, how hard would it be to add DPI, 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 DPI? You can do it via software. I just don't want to have to launch your garbage software and then make like 3 seconds switch modes and then make 5 seconds turn it off. There you go. I solved your UI problem. You know, or make like middle click plus that switch modes or something. You know? Just take some feedback and actually support your product past launch. Corsair just doesn't do that with their IQ stuff either. Like their PC building IQ stuff. So they just like, that one's not working out. We're not selling it. Let's, instead of patching it into the new version, let's just discontinue it. Happens with NZXT as well. And their peripherals, watch that whole thing burning down. And I'm not surprised that their peripherals aren't selling, and they're basically having to charge them as part of their rental because they're garbage. They came out with like wired peripherals when wireless was like many generations into it, but to the point where it was like the second generation of random Chinese brands like Ninjitsuo and GameSense having somewhat viable wireless mice. Right? Like, literally, you can just buy an off-the-shelf sensor, processor, receiver. I'm not saying you're going to have VAXEE levels of wireless tech. And what I mean by that is that, and I can attest to this personally, I would take VAXEE's 1000 hertz competitive mode over Corsair's 2000. Because Corsair's 2000 is literally just sending the same thing twice. It's been proven before. I would argue that a lot of these early, like I think Glorious had a 4K mouse. I'd take like VAXEE's, like the actual like latency on VAXEE's 1000 was at or below a lot of the early 4K polling mice. Mind blown. Would rather have that, and was super consistent. Would rather have that over like their 1000 over other brands 4K. So, like that's happening. Any company can make a wireless mouse, and the first generation of NZXT comes out wired on all their stuff. And it's like, what? Like, that's probably why you haven't seen Fanatic. Like, they made their Bolt. Good job. Like the Bolt. Very much in my wheelhouse. But you never saw their clutch, and I think they had a shift keyboard. Like, I'm trying to remember what their FPS one, like their right-hand ergo mouse was, but those never made it. They made it to Gen 2 with barely any changes, at least on one of the two mice, still wired. And that's what it seemed like the NZXT peripherals were just, and then they made a Gen 2, and I'm like, but your Gen 1 did so bad with those same designs. Why would you just make a Gen 2? Very confusing. I could have predicted that downfall, at least of the peripherals. Like they made things that weren't wanted. They were like the most generic, multi-generation old interpretations of not even necessarily what people wanted back then, but at least what brands were selling. Like 2 full generations ago in mice. At least one big generation, because everybody and their brother was making at a minimum wireless mice, if not dipping toes into 4K at the time. Whereas VAXEE, they went through the iteration. They went through the different stuff with their firmware, like the different types of their firmware. You can still run the 1000 hertz firmware on the mice with the 1000 hertz dongle. At least in the older mice that supported in the past, like these ship with just this. They make sensical changes, like, hey, removing the extra weight for the supports for the cable because nobody's using this wired. I could have told you that from personal experience. People who can afford mice like this, if they're going to use it, they're going to use it wirelessly. If it dies, they're just going to grab a different mouse. Possibly, if they're super into it, another of the same, plug it in and put this one on charge. Or you just charge it, you're done for the day, you plug it in and you charge it. Nobody's using wireless mice because it's reliable enough. Even in competition now, they're using wireless mice wirelessly. So you do not need, like, I believe David thought he couldn't plug this into his work PC because I didn't have the cable with me. So he was using this wired, and I'm like, bro, I didn't even know it worked because it's not like an advertised feature anymore. And they saved money by going away from. I always preferred rubberized cables, to be truthful, over the braided ones, but the braided ones, especially those shoelace braided ones, when I was using the XE wired for gaming, when the new one came in, like, it's barely noticeable that there's even a wire there. But they went to the rubber one, because it's actually more durable for charging. You can generally use thicker gauge because you're not worried about it being flexible. You can use thicker gauge wires in there, which means it can charge faster. There's a bunch of stuff like that, you know what I mean? So, like, optimizing it for how people actually use it. Oh, and in this case, they moved the power switch used to be over here with the all, like, boom 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 for buttons. Then the power switch moved to over here on the XES. And then now, and that's so that you could do all your basic functions single-handedly. Now, with the toggle is gone and you hold it on and hold it off, and use this to switch modes and that to switch settings, you can basically do it all one-handed, and that's what they are aiming for. You can just do it on the fly, tune it how you want. It's all in the mouse. They've gotten a ton of feedback saying, we want software. This isn't enough. Because some people can't, I don't know if they can't figure out how to do this. This comes from a very tournament mindset, not having software. And they're working on it. But they're like, hey, we don't want to provide you a software solution until you don't have to install it, until it's not crappy. You know, that's very much their MO. And I appreciate that. That is, it's brilliant. You know, brilliant. I'm glad the EC2 shape came back in the form of the E1. I do truly think the E1 is a better shape. The changes to the butt, especially this raised butt here, the raised ass. VAXEE has that on all their mice to some extent. That little bit of helps because the EC2 goes all the way down flat to the floor, right? And then compared to that as well, they rounded this out a little bit more. It's a little bit shorter back here. Which apparently helps with a pinch in here when you do it in your extreme. I'm guessing extreme right, because I can feel it twists kind of into that pocket there. If it had a longer butt, it might catch, I think you'd have to watch their video for an explanation there. It makes sense. And it visually may look a bunch different. But I compared them side by side in the other red E1 video, and if you start chopping it down feature by feature, it actually looks more and more and more similar. Also, though ergonomically it may look different once you put it in hand, and that's where a lot of people are like, yeah, but the bumps there, or like here. I'm like, yeah, but put your hand on it. Where do you naturally want to sit it? It doesn't necessarily matter how it looks, but feel in hand. If you close your eyes and ignore the butt, they're hitting the same dimensions in the same spots, while keeping their VAXEE look, VAXEE design language. But then if you actually start chopping off, like you just look at those clicks, and how they're like snub nose over here or whatever, that's exactly like an EC2. Like you almost got to break it down. Because as a whole, it looks so much different until you start just looking at certain angles, certain parts. Pick one up. I was very surprised at how tall a mouse like this can be this light. If you haven't used an EC2, like a Thorn, if you're a Thorn user, consider looking at the E1. The Thorn is it's a little chubbier of a shape. It worked very well for me. It was the first mouse since the XE came out that I could just use the whole night without being like, is it the mouse or me? Is it the mouse? Let's go back to the XE and try that. Oh, I'm doing better with the XE. You know, like the Thorn was the first one since the XE had come out where I was like, oh, I just picked it up, put it in my hand, use it the whole night, you know, clicked heads, and never like the mouse disappeared. That's what a mouse should do. I never thought that I was using thought about that I was using a different mouse. I just enjoyed myself. And that's how you know a mouse is for you. That's how you know, like the shape's good. And once again, my opinion, once again, since the 3310, sensors are relevant. Now there are some early wireless ones, I guess, that are kind of bleh, but for the most part, shape first. Then, you know, as long as it's got a reasonable sensor, you'll be fine. There are a lot of mice out there that have knockoff shapes. You know, like, oh, well, I can get the same shape as an EC2 for $20 from AliExpress using, like this random Chinese brand that basically remade the shape. I have some of those. I forget what the brand is, and they're like wired ones, but they actually changed some stuff. They added a bit more ergonomics to it. I'm going to tell you that with those less established brands, because they're just using the off-the-shelf stuff, the tracking isn't going to touch even your main brands like Razer, that sort of stuff, at least from my experience. Because they don't put the R&D in. Like, they just basically get the PixArt sensor, the RF receiver, slap a battery in it, and ship it. What they're going for is cloning somebody's shape more than that. Now, if that's all you can afford, what would I take? Like a low-end wired... I would probably take like a low-end wired Razer mouse over like a knockoff shape AliExpress, personally. You know, like for example, that Viper... Oh, it's not even called the Viper. It's called the Cobra Essential, maybe? I'm trying to remember. That's like a $40 mouse. Otherwise, like wait for Black Friday. You can pick up gen old stuff. A lot of Logitech stuff goes 50% off for Black Friday. You know, keep an eye on those deals. Rival 3 Wireless, still a half decent mouse, many generations behind kind of at this point, but you know, or Death Head or Essential, great mouse. You know, you don't have to get to the top end like this, and personally I would rather have it from a known established brand, reliability wise, tracking wise, unless it's a known model that has problems. Eschew those, obviously. Like if they're like, oh, you know, like this blah 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 has known tracking and they just never fixed, obviously don't pick up those models. But in general, like, you know, from a Razer or a SteelSeries, you should be getting like a viable mouse, you know, even on the low end. Whereas when they start cloning a lot of these shapes, it's you know, they throw some guts, like from technical perspective, might say, like, even, for example, my Ninjutsu Katana Ultralight, the scroll wheel always skips, right? And due to the wireless tech not being, I think it's probably antenna based, but because it's like not tested very well, the cursor will just teleport to the top of your screen randomly. Like it'll just pew all the way up. If you're on a vertical monitor, it'll go from the bottom to the top, and that'll just happen in the middle of your gaming. Also, the mouse feet on the bottom of the Ninjutsu Katana, in the middle, it sticks on the outside, but eventually like bubbles up. So while you're using it, every so often you gotta pick it up, squish them down, pick them up, squish them down. What was their recommended fix? Buy aftermarket glass feet. I'm gonna end on this. Buy aftermarket glass feet. For my what? Yes, if you're wondering, now that they're wall hack, they actually had to do a PSA about not using glass feet on a glass pad. But yes, that was Ninjitsuo's fix for the... And yes, that's Ninjitsuo. You know, there might be a reason why VAXEE's making this first-gen Sora. Just saying Ninjitsuo's build quality especially compared to VAXEE's. VAXEE's better than, I would say, my opinion, especially on the finishes and the colors and stuff like that. Most brands, if not all. Yeah, their build's not great. And their response, like I said, to the feet essentially pulling away from the body, just existing, and basically like it would go from gliding beautifully, you know, like one of the best gliding mice ever once you push the feet all the way down, to just because it's like the mouse foot is sagging and there's just so much friction. You have to like constantly push it back out. And their fix was, oh, why aren't you using glass feet? You can buy them from Super Glide or something like that. And I'm like, what's that? So that's kind of what you get with some of that. And those mice aren't, like, some of them are cheap and some of them are, you know, Kickstarters and or very small startup companies, so they can't afford to be actually all that cheap. I still do like that mouse. I really like the IntelliMouse Optical. If you have the money, though, like I said, especially this XES. 3 people now. They always thought my XE was a bit big. They didn't feel what I was raving about. Then they saw this little guy here. 3 of them. Well, Mooskie's one of them. He literally was here using it, had his Maya non-X, used this, went home that night, ordered the Shishiro Botan version of this because it had just come out that day. Not just because of the Shishiro Botan, but I was like, hey, if you're going to order this, you might want to be interested in the limited edition one because it you know, it's kind of a cool, great color. And it just came out, and you have like till tomorrow to order it, or like I think tomorrow's the last day for ordering it. Also, somebody who previously was only willing to spend like $40 max on a mouse is picking one of these up after trying it out at work. So VAXEE's doing something right. When this was scaled down, they adjusted it. They didn't just go, oh, make it 10% smaller. No, they actually adjusted some curves to still work with your hand, even though the mouse is smaller compared to the big guy. Just look at the Death Adder Mini. Razer doesn't know how to do that, apparently. And then they sell you the Hyperspeed, the Death Adder V3 Hyperspeed, which is a completely different shape than the Death Adder V3 Pro. If you can, support brands like, in my opinion, like VAXEE, who work with the community and have a good, you know, mindset to their products. Also, remember, my XE wired was broken, out of warranty, and they replaced it. I did have to pay, but most brands tell you, oh, you had a 2-year warranty. You're outside of that. Sucks to suck. So they might have had a couple bumps early on in their support when they were new and really small. But yeah, gotta appreciate that level of support, especially from a small brand like this. I think they realize, though, that you really do use their products. I do every day. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think. Fluorescent green, yay or nay? Or which version of the E1, which colorway would you get and why? See in the comments down below. Peace.